This is Oman FM.
With me today are Senior Control Specialist and the Director of the Department of Oversight of the Defense Sector, Dr. Sultan bin Hamad al-Bahri, and the Administrative Specialist, Hamood bin Sulaiman al-Abri, the Director of the International Cooperation Department. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me in the studio today.
Thank you, Irfan. Thank you for having us. And we are very excited to be with you and your valued listeners.
Thank you so much for joining us. And they have joined us here today, listeners, to discuss the State Audit Institution's latest report. Gentlemen, for those who don't know, what is the State Audit Institution and what is its role?
Well, a State Audit Institution is an independent entity which is responsible for auditing the financial statements and the performance of public entities in Oman. And the primary role of this institution is to promote transparency, accountability, and good governance within the government sector. And there are many functions and duties of these institutions, and all these functions and duties are outlined in the State Audit Law. Let me mention some of them, if you allow me.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. The most or the important one is to promote state public funds and to ensure the adequacy of the traditional and automated internal control systems. Also the integrity of financial transactions, accounting entities, and the obedience to the laws and regulations on the financial systems and personnel. Also, the mandates of the institution is to make sure of the implementing laws, rules, regulations, decisions taken in respects with the subjects. Also, the State Audit Institution has the role to expose the financial violations by the auditees. One of the important tasks of the institution is also to indicate the deficiencies or the shortcomings in the applicable laws, regulations, and system related to the financial and personnel aspects, and to promote or to propose ratification for those laws. So these are the main roles and duties of the State Audit Institution in Oman.
And could you please provide us with an overview of the State Audit Institution's annual report?
First, we would like to thank you again for inviting us today to talk about the State Audit Institution 2022 annual report that has been recently submitted to His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq. Regarding your question about the State Audit Institution annual report, I'd like to clarify that this report is one of the most significant documents issued annually by the State Audit Institution. This report highlights the results of the State Audit Institution work for a specific financial year. According to Article 66 of the Basic Law of the State and Article 29 of State Audit Law, the Chairman of the State Audit Institution shall submit this report directly to His Majesty the Sultan and send copies of it, therefore, to the Council of Ministers, State Council, as well as Shura Council before the end of the following financial year. It is worth mentioning here that the annual report has witnessed gradual developments since the establishment of the State Audit Institution to date. For example, before the issuance of the State Audit Law number 111 by 2011, the annual report was only submitted to His Majesty the Sultan. However, since the enactment of the current law in 2011, the State Audit Institution is obliged to send copies of this report to the Council of Ministers, State and Shura Councils. Also, there is another recent developments regarding the annual report, where a royal directive of His Majesty the Sultan issues in 2021, by which the State Audit Institution should publish a community brief of its annual report. This is an overview of the annual report of the State Audit Institution.
And when is this report usually submitted to His Majesty?
According to Article 66 of the Basic Law and the Basic Law of the State and Article 29 of State Audit Law, the annual report should be submitted before the end of the following financial year. In previous years, the State Audit Institution submitted its annual report in the last quarter of the next financial year. Also, it is important to highlight two main points to justify why the SAE is required by the law to submit its annual report before the end of the following financial year. Firstly, according to the State Audit Law, the State Audit Institution audits the draft final account of the state and reports the results to the Ministry of Finance to carry out the corrective actions. Because and due to the ratification of the final account of state takes place in the following financial year, the State Audit Institution submits its annual report in the following financial year, after the ratification of the final account of the state, in order to include the result of this audit within its annual report. The second reason is that the annual audit plan includes a number of audit tasks that are completed by the end of the year. Therefore, the State Audit Institution submits the annual report in the following year to include the results of this audit task in the report. These are the main reasons why the State Audit Institution submit its annual report in the following year.
And why was it submitted earlier this year?
This is a worthy question to be asked. One reason for this is that this year the ratification of 2022 final account of the state has been brought forward, contrary to previous years where the final accounts of the state were ratified at the end of July. So the State Audit Institution submitted its report earlier this year.
What are the key topics included in the 2022 annual report?
The annual report usually includes the results of the institution's work with regards to the audit of many subjects in the entities subject to the institution audit. This year, or the 2022 year, the report shed light on the efforts of the institution in promoting integrity, such as financial and administrative irregularities addressed by the institution and the action taken thereto. Also, it shed light on the activities in exercising the role and functions of the anti-corruption agency or authority, which following up the implementation of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. The report also shows the results of studying draft laws, regulations, and systems prepared by the entities subject to the audit of the institution. This year report also highlights the statistics on the numbers of complaints and reports received by the institution during the year 2022.
For the entities that are subject to the audit of the institution, what are the most prominent audit topics that are included in the report?
It includes different subjects in the, entities subject to the audit of the institutions. Let me mention some of them. For example, it includes the audit of the final accounts of the state for the year 2022, It also includes the audit of tax assessment and tax collection activities, the audit of financial and administrative activities and performance assessment of some directorates and departments in the government. Also, it includes the audit of some subjects related to the sector of commerce, agriculture, tourism, labor, health, education, and other sectors. Of course, also it includes some audits of some subjects related to activities of authorities, investments, and companies concerned with the sector of energy, aviation, environment, electricity, mining, and other important sectors.
And what's the institution's methodology in carrying out these audits?
The institution undertakes its audit tasks according to an annual audit plan approved by the chairman of the State Audit Institution. The institution takes into account a number of considerations while preparing the plan. I can give you some example for this, such as Oman Vision 2040 goals, approved international standards in the field of audit and accounting, as well as audit work manuals of the institution. With regard to the selection of audit subjects, the institution follows a set of professional standards and foundations that are based on the principle of relative materiality and risk analysis of the entities subject to the audit. I'd like to mention here that the audit plan also includes the members auditing the subjects, as well as the time specified for the implementation of the audit task. So the main methodology is represented by the annual audit plan that follow up by the State Audit Institution.
Now, regarding any public feedback, has the institution ever received any complaints or reports or anything from the public?
Yes, actually, let me emphasize here that the institution, State Audit Institution, regards the community as a key partner in protecting the public funds of the state. And during this year, 2022, we are talking about, the institution dealt with around 587 complaints and reports from the publics. That includes aspects related to financial and administrative violation, as well as, non-integrity of awarding some tenders or abusing powers and other stuffs, not to mention the complaints and reports also received by the institution via different channels. Around 84% of which have been studied and examined. We also would like to emphasize that the institution devotes considerable attention to complaints and reports and deals with those complaints in a very confidential manner, but not to disclose the complaints except when required, such as in cases where the complaints related to one of the rights of the who submits the complaint itself. Also, in this regard, it's worth to mention that the institutions implement several media and awareness programs, activities, and events. This is in order to achieve an optimal awareness and build honest trends and practices at the institutional or societal levels. For example, in 2022, State Audit Institution implemented around 259 programs and events. The most important or prominent of which are the awareness program called Nazaha, that is broadcasted in Oman television during Ramadan. And we have also a radio program called Oversight is everyone's responsibility. It's a weekly program in the radio of Sultanate of Oman.
And is there anything else you would like to add before we end this interview?
Yes, we would like to underline that the community and entities subject to the SAY audit are all partners with the State Audit Institution in the protection of public funds. The State Audit Institution works together with such entities at different levels to provide appropriate assistance and support to overcome all difficulties and challenges faced by these entities. Indeed, the concerned entities have shown cooperation and response by taking corrective measures in relation to the institution observations and recommendations. By the end of this interview, we would like to thank you again for this interview.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. And there you have it, listeners. Those were two members of the State Audit Institution. That was Dr. Sultan bin Hamad al-Bahri and Hamood bin Sulaiman al-Abri. Gentlemen, thank you yet again for joining us here in the studio.
Thank you once again, and Arfan, and thank you for your valued listeners. It has been a pleasure